here's the thing. The thing that I've learned about me, that I've always done and can't not do, is I go out and I find ideas in the world and I drag them back to the nest and I try them out. And it's this, I've just discovered that, like, oh, that's the thing I'm doing. And it makes me happy and I can't not do it. And so this was one of those where in one of my communities that I circulate in, someone had the notion of the internal podcast. And my first thought was, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
That's your knee jerk.
And yet I wrote it down.
Welcome to the EBFC show, the easier, better for construction podcast. I'm your host, Felipe Engineer Manriquez. This show is all about the business of construction. Today's episode is sponsored by
Bosch Refine My Site is a cloud-based construction collaboration platform that applies lean principles to enable your entire team to plan, communicate, and execute in real time. It's the digital tool that works in tandem with your last planner system process and puts it all together in one simple, collaborative ecosystem. This easy-to-use platform is available in English, German, Spanish, Portuguese, and French, and can be used on desktops, tablets, and mobile devices. According to Spencer Easton, scheduling manager at Oakland Construction,
Refine My Site, in my opinion, is the best, leanest tool on the market for last planner system.
Here's what our users have to say. We've looked at 3 other digital scheduling platforms and none compare to the straightforward approach Refine My Site takes. From milestone planning all the way down to daily tasks, this program gives every general contractor and their trade partners meaningful collaboration, accountability, and KPIs. Register today to try Refine My Site for free for 60 days.
Today's episode is sponsored by Construction Accelerator.
The design and construction industries come up with and build great things, but we also build and waste in how we do those things, in our interactions, in our contracts, in our logistics. So what does this do for our bottom line or our next project? The best firms maximize their value by removing that waste and only doing what's essential to the work, what makes them money. Construction Accelerator will train you to see the waste and give your teams the lean tools and experience to remove it immediately. All online. Construction Accelerator is made up of 3 to 9 minute videos that can be watched again and again in the field, at the office, and at home, all broken down by topic. Need to learn pool planning? We have videos on the process, how to set up a room, and how to kick off a team. Need to set up a target value delivery project? We discuss all the aspects of TVD, especially cost. Or maybe you just need to brush up on 5S. Well, we have videos on that as well. You can download and print reference materials to use on site to immediately translate watching into doing. Subscribe today at trycanow.com. Let's build an industry, not just a project.
Today's show is also sponsored by the Lean Construction Institute. LCI is working to lead the building industry in transforming its practices and culture. Its vision is to create a healthy and thriving industry that delivers outstanding project outcomes every time for everyone. Check the show notes for more information. Now, to the show. Welcome to the show, Mr. Todd Henderson. Todd, I am so happy to have you on the show.
I'm thrilled to be here, Felipe. What a treat.
Yeah.
We need stuff like this, right?
We do.
We need more channels of conversation and kicking ideas around and sharing who's doing what.
Yeah, and right before we started, Todd, you mentioned that you did an internal podcast.
The purpose was, gosh, how far back do I go?
You go back as far as you need to, Todd.
I mean, I could take up, in 3 hours, you're going to be like, Todd, you need to wrap up this story. My partner, Jenny Hastings, is in our Sacramento office, and people don't get this, I'm actually mostly introverted. She's the opposite. Anyway, I bounced this idea off her, and she was just like all in, like, we need to do this. And it just sort of, we almost dared each other into it at some point, basically. And,
well, that's a good way to do it. And then who's your target audience inside there?
I mean, the target audience was the firm, and we had kicked it around for a year. Like, this is a crazy idea, right? Yeah, but man, that'd be fun. And then the pandemic hit, and we thought, you know what? We're not seeing each other anymore across the firm. We've lost so much in this, especially in the audio format, right? Because
Right.
most communications are typing to each other, unless you're talking on Teams or whatever. And it just felt like, well, let's give this a shot as a way to help share what's going on around the firm, positive stuff, encouraging stuff by and large, highlight people who are doing something cool. I mean, it's the same thing you're doing here in a way, right? Just a much smaller audience. Like, who's doing something that's worth elevating and bringing to the front? We had a lot of fun. We haven't really decided to stop it, but I think both of us are just so dang busy that we sort of did our pilot year, and it's kind of cooling now. We'll see if we go back to it at some point.
That is beautiful. I love that you're showcasing good things that are happening that, a lot of times, especially in a design firm, people don't have a lot of collision points with each other to bump into each other, with the day-to-day project things happening. And it's a great idea so that people can drop in and hear what's going on.
So our very first episode, and again, this was like in, April of last year, give or take. The wheels had just fallen off the global wagon, right? We're all
Yes.
suddenly working from home, and and we'd had a layoff, right? Not a big one, but nonetheless, that's a cause for alarm, and we some furloughs, and it's kind of what a lot of firms were doing to try to wait out because the work had more or less slowed down pretty quickly. So our first episode was a conversation with two of our founding partners about recessions and about downtimes, because they'd gone through them, right? The firm's 38 years old or so. And it was just a conversation of like, hey, what was it like for you? What have you learned from recessions? And it was, there wasn't another channel in the firm to sort of get that kind of a message out of, hey, it's going to be all right. We're going to get through this. Lean times come and lean times go. It was very opportunistic the way we tried to program the content.
I love that. How long was the show, like that first episode?
I mean, it was less than an hour. It was probably a half an hour.
Okay. You're tapping on a couple of things there, Todd. Definitely have a sense of respect for people. And the people that don't know Todd is an incredible facilitator. And I recently got to watch him working at the LCI Design Forum, and he kind of closed it down. And he closed it down with an experiment with the art of the focus conversation, which I thought was brilliant. It was the most fun I'd ever had closing out of a conference ever.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, and people were like on it. You even had to, like, he was getting to play the music off on him to get off stage because they needed to like end the conference, and people were interacting on a digital whiteboard. And Todd said, he's like, just keep going, people. Well, I'll keep this open for you. And people just kept on. They kept on going.
Yeah. It's still open. I mean, you'll still be somebody there giving feedback for all I know. Oh, that's the thing, right? I think my life would be easier in some ways if I could shed this, but it wouldn't be me. This is this notion that I found it, I learned it from an Agile, source. I did an online training, and I was like, this is freaking amazing. And it started, there's a quote, and I think it's from Covey. I forget who said it, but the quote is, to learn and not to use is not to learn. And when I found that, I was like, that's the thing. That's it, right? And that's just, so when I learn something, I basically deploy it everywhere I can and just kick the tires on it. So that focused conversation as a way of debriefing a team, learned it sounded really cool and very promising. Immediately sprung it on one of my teams, like, hey guys, I'm gonna try something different today. And was just astonished how much better it was as a way of eliciting valuable feedback from teams. And then of course, I'm on the organizing committee for the design forum, and they said, hey, do you want to do the plus delta at the end? And I'm like, I don't believe in plus delta anymore. I've got something else, but I have no idea if it's going to work with 100 people on a Miro board. But I'm willing to absolutely fail in front of everyone I respect. So let's see what happens. Could you tell how nervous I was during that?
Yeah, I mean, you said it once. You were totally professional. Todd was totally profesh.
I rarely get anxious about public speaking or anything like that anymore.
Well, for people that don't know, Todd, it's like you're on camera, like as a presenter in this type of event, and there's a audio person, a technical person off camera with you. They never show their face, but they're like the whispering voice in the background.
Yeah.
And you've got chat happening. You've got other people popping in. I mean, it's just pandemonium from the presenter's perspective. And Todd, you stayed totally calm, and you were live before they told you were live. That they caught you multiple times where you were live, but luckily you didn't run your mouth and talk schmackety schmack.
That is luck.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Luckily, you were silent. And I was just watching you, and I messaged you, and I just said, "Hey, Todd, you're live." And I don't think you saw it.
I saw that.
Or you did.
I saw it a while later, but yeah.
Yeah, you don't see it right away because the chat's not in your face. Like you're trying to focus on looking at the camera, sounding professional, hitting your mark on the timing. So there's a lot going on, and it's even with practice, it doesn't go when it's live as they practice it.
It's a weird experience to be talking to the little green glowing light on your laptop, knowing that there's some number of people, 100 pairs of ears listening to you and judging you, but you can't see them. You can't tell, am I landing with these people? Are they even hearing me? You got zero feedback coming back, and yet you just have to trundle on rather. Yeah. Anyway, well, I'm glad it sounded good.
From our perspective,
from your perspective, because
in the audience,
it was weird for me.
And even in the audience, Todd, we can't hear how the other people are reacting. But thankfully, because you used that digital whiteboard Miro, we can see other people reacting, and that finally you could see that there are human beings behind the keyboards.
And then it took off, and then you saw me. Where if you were me, you would have seen me relax. Go, I did. Oh, this is working. Yes. And people were just going nuts, and we got so much incredible feedback. And that's, I'm a bit relentless in the notion that, and it's straight out of the Toyota way, the right process yields the right results. And I think if you bring a better process for something like pulling feedback out of people, you're going to get better feedback. And it sounds tautological, but
tautological. I like that. Can we make that a word? Tautological.
Tautological.
It makes sense to Todd. It's tautological.
People don't get that, or they kind of get it intellectually, but then they just kind of go back and just do whatever they're doing. Process is everything.
I love that. And in the spirit of process is everything, Todd, this is a perfect time to introduce you to the larger global audience. Todd, when you introduce yourself, please also make sure you hit this mark, rabble-rousing.
Fair enough. Well, so hi everyone. I'm Todd Henderson. I'm an architect. I am the principal with Boulder Associates Architects. We're a firm of 140 folks or so across the country that does healthcare design and senior living. We've got interior design, graphic design, but in the healthcare space, we're specialists. And I've been here 20 something years. I'm kind of forget now. Long enough that's like.
Oh, you got a pandemic in there, so it's going to change the time span.
Exactly. Last year was like 6 years anyway. So. But so, I live in San Francisco. I helped found our San Francisco office, and I'm the office director for that. But I'm also a board member of the firm, so I'm pretty active at kind of multiple scales. And rabble-rousing is a pretty good term, and I just am wired such that I find ideas and I try to foist them on my unsuspecting. Actually, they're suspecting now. My suspecting teammates and firm, staff. Many of those things go well. Scrum is one of the ones that I'm just really smitten with, and I continue to explore in that space. Once I sort of got bitten by the bug of lean design and construction, my partner Romano Nickerson, years ago, 12 years ago now, went deep into that space and taking these ideas and figuring out how can we apply them to design. And that was this waking up moment for me that kind of set my course ever since. In fact, I mean, the reason I'm in San Francisco is that we were awarded a position on the St. Luke's hospital team with Sutter Health, CPMC, and we were partnered with Smith Group. And there was a co-located, integrated project delivery team, and Romano tapped me and said, "Hey, do you want to be part of this?" I'm like, "Oh, heck yeah." And that was just this amazing lab to just try stuff and see what we could do to make things better. And it kind of changed how I think about the world, honestly. Once you realize that it's possible to have an idea and to do an experiment and make something better and have that continue, it's almost like you've discovered that you've been holding a magic wand. It's a really slow form of magic. It's really slow and effortful magic, but I don't know, at least for me, it's like, oh, well, now what else can I do?
Yeah, you are the natural scientist. I remember when we got to talking, you were already dabbling with Agile, even when we already bumped into each other. You'd been on that path, and I just I lightly just pushed you a little bit, and you went and you got certified as a Scrum Master, just like that. Like the next thing I knew, you were there already, and you were doing it. And I get asked questions about Scrum in architecture and design all the time, and I always say, Todd Henderson, living proof that it works in design very effectively and a high level. And I was so happy to see that you made that investment in yourself to get that training, because Todd, you're a high level leader at your organization, and I think it's worth pausing for a second for everybody, every leader out there listening. Todd's an example of what every great leader should do, and that's invest in learning. It's never too late to keep learning and sharpening that saw, just to borrow another Stephen Covey quote, since we're both going to be Stephen aficionados here. It's a great thing that you did, and it sounds like it's paying dividends, and I want to definitely hear more about that. But before we hear more about Scrum, one of my favorite subjects in the whole world, what got you into architecture?
It's funny. In high school, it's getting time to start applying to college, and I thought I wanted to do like electrical engineering.
That's what I went to school for.
Computers. And I just thought, it's going to be kind of boring and probably not very creative. Idiot. I'd be retired by now if I had done that. Anyway. And I don't know where I honestly, I don't remember where the notion came from, but I stumbled on architecture. It's like, oh, it's this kind of, even marriage of obviously creativity and invention and all that, but also a lot of science, a lot of detail and rigor and that side, right? I went for it and honestly never looked back. I mean, it just fit my temperament to a T, and off I went.
How many Raspberry Pis do you have in your house right now?
Just 2 Raspberry Pis. And they're not even running because I've found that they're a little bit too powerful for much. They're too big and they're too powerful and too expensive for what I do. So I probably have about a dozen microcontrollers. So little, much smaller, 2 square inches,
wow,
$5 a piece. And careful which rabbit hole you send me down.
Let's go into one of your favorite ones that you got using. What are you using it for?
Spool this up so it doesn't take.
You spool. I'll cut you off when it's time. Don't worry. I got you.
Okay, good. If you promise, then I'll
promise.
Just go.
Here.
Okay, so.
Promise.
My love of tinkering and experimenting isn't just in architecture. It's global.
It's everywhere.
Right? So I absolutely love cooking. I very obviously love eating. Probably 8 years ago, came across the notion of sous vide. Have you ever heard of this?
Oh yeah, I've definitely heard of it.
Yeah, it's.
But tell the people listening that aren't as French as you are. Audience. I mean, here you are, San Francisco Todd, and I know you weren't born there, but you've blended in nicely with the population.
It suits me well. So sous vide, very simply, is a way of cooking where you seal food in a bag, immerse it in water, and you keep the water at a really precise temperature. And that sounds dumb and not interesting, but you can do amazing things. So the classic example is to cook a steak. A medium rare steak is 131 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you take a steak, seal it in a bag, drop it into water that you hold at 131 degrees, you can cook a steak. So I did this just the other day. I cooked some flank steak for 8 hours. You would normally not cook a steak for 8 hours, but it doesn't overcook because it never gets hotter than medium rare. But what does happen is a whole cascade of reactions happen. The tougher tissues will sort of gelatinize and become tender and silky. You get this amazing transformation. Okay, so enough on that.
You're making everybody hungry right now. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, all the vegetarians are like, blah. But you can do this. I did baked potatoes this way. That I'm not sure was any better than just doing it in the oven. Anyway, at the time, a sous vide cooker, the thing that sort of lets you do this, was like a couple $1,000. And I'm starting to get into programming and microcontrollers and dabbling in this area. And I thought, hang on, I need a temperature sensor, I need a heater, and I need a little pump or something to move the water around. And then enough brain to just read the temperature and say, hey, do I need more heat? Do I need to let the heat off?
Simple feedback loop. You're speaking my electrical engineer language. Keep going, Todd.
Oh my God. Well, so I go down and it took me fully a year to build this thing because I learned programming, electronics, at least parts of it, how to build an enclosure. I mean, it was like, at some point I was like, oh my God, I'm making a product here. I have to and it was the most fun thing. It eventually worked. I learned about the PID algorithm. So the engineers in the crowd, PID is amazing. That is one of my favorite things I've ever learned. I think about PID all the time. And I made this stupid thing, and it's housed in a cigar box, and it's big and it's janky, and it was so amateur, and I'm so stupid proud of it, and I still use this thing. It's not my favorite project. My favorite project, and it's cliche, is my next project, and I'm calling it Sous Vide X. So now, almost a decade later, I'm like, okay, I know more. Now I have access to a 3D printer. The microprocessors are better, so I'm building a newer, better, awesomer one that's going to not be janky. It's going to actually, turns out, it was going to wind up looking sort of a whole lot like the ones that if I was a smarter man, I would just go buy one at Target for $100.
Oh my God, they're all the way down to $100 now.
They're super cheap because it's not complicated. But you know what? It is so fun. The road to get there, to me, is more interesting than the destination. I mean, I want the sous vide cooker, right? But it's the discovery and the learning and the problem solving, and it's always one step forward, one step back, and you just discover things like, oh, if I have a long enough wire, that becomes an antenna, and transferring data across it becomes really fraught, and it takes me a while and a lot of Googling to figure out why everything's crazy, and it's just that learning and that discovery is just. That's my drug. You're
like a mad scientist. I love it. Because it's like, what do people in your house say about all of these gadgets you have laying around? I'm sure it's not just contained in one place.
I get a lot of, there is some management that's needed to keep the blast zone down. I have a wonderful wife, Joelle, and my daughter, Cicely, who's 20. And we have a little a Chiweenie. It's a half Chihuahua, half Dachshund.
Wow!
All three of them just kind of look at me out of the side of their eye, and they just know that this makes me happy. And yeah, there's a non-zero chance I'm going to light something on fire, but it's what makes me happy. So I get a lot of I am indulged. I'm very lucky that way.
You clearly have done your due diligence and you've studied. I still think that we haven't gone around into the rabble-rousing enough, and we need to go a little deeper into that. What do you mean by rabble-rousing as part of your essence? I guess it would make you a rabble-rouser.
I guess it would. It is for me. It is this drive to try new things, and it's almost honestly, it would be as simple as that if I hadn't come across Lean and Toyota and the example of innovating in a direction, innovating with a place that you want to go, right?
Right.
And so just the notion of continuous improvement to me is, oh God, I don't want to sound stupid, but it's kind of my calling, I guess.
That's not stupid, philosophical. I'll give you a synonym.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah. A synonym. I love it. I love it. It is just my way of life. And I wish more people felt similarly, right? I mean, I think the honest truth is that in any population, you got sort of 95%. They're just going to do what they did yesterday until some force comes along that kind of knocks them off that trajectory.
Yeah.
People who know me know I use a lot of metaphors drawn from random places. So one thing that stuck with me from the only class in college I got an A+ in, which was freshwater biology, not an architecture class. I freaking loved this biology class. Oh, it was so good. And salmon.
Yeah.
Right? Salmon. They're anadromous, I believe, which means that they are born in freshwater, right? And people generally know this. They hatch, they swim downstream, they grow up at sea for 4 years, and then they come back to their spawning ground. And that's the story that people know about salmon. And I'm looking at you and you're going, Todd, why are you talking about salmon?
No, I'm not. I'm like, there's got to be some hidden salmon story. I'm waiting for it. I'm on the edge of my chair, Todd. Come on.
It turns out there is, because that story is true for 98% of the salmon.
What?
The other 2%, yeah. And I'm reaching back to mid-1990s, so any biologists, let me know if I'm getting this wrong, but this is what I remember from then. The other 2% are composed of two different populations. 1% are called jacks, and 1% are called aces. And I forget which one's which, but one of those groups, it comes back in 5 years, not 4. Interesting thing, right?
Yeah.
So it mixes the gene pools. Way to go, evolution, right? Because otherwise each spawning ground would eventually diverge into its own species of fish. But the aces do something else. They come back in 4 years, but they go to a different spawning ground. And I love that. And when I read that, I thought, oh, is that me? And so why would this be important for salmon to come back to a different spawning ground? Well, guess what? Sometimes there's a landslide and where you spawn no longer exists. Also, sometimes a new waterway opens up. Maybe something happens and now you could actually swim up a tributary to an untouched spawning ground, right? And so this is just one of the ways salmon are awesome.
That's amazing. You got salmon that are out there exploring the wild frontiers, the new waters. The ace. I think it seems like the aces would be the explorers. Comment below, amateur biologists, and let us know if Todd's memory is correct, because we dare not go to Wikipedia and find out for sure.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, that's devastating sometimes to find out that what I remembered from mid-90s biology in college is probably completely wrong or overwritten by now, but at least it's a metaphor. I love it. And I couldn't tell you how I got on this path, but it was rabble-rousing. It's the thing I do. I just go and find ideas and bring them back, and it makes me happy. And then I struggle for years to get people to adopt them, right? And I've learned that in an organization there's a certain kind of wavelength of change. I love Boulder Associates, and I know that I need to be talking about something for about 3 years before it kind of catches on. And I've developed patience with that. That's okay.
Oh, it's faster there than it is here, because where I am, I have to talk about it for 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
For it to catch.
Lucky then. Yeah.
You are so lucky. You have no idea. And then I'll hear people say, I was talking the other day, this week actually, Todd, and somebody mentioned something, and I said, oh yeah, I was the one that showed it to them this year.
I'm not kidding. I have that all the time. Yeah. Stuff will kind of pop back up. I'm like, that's a great idea. Let's do that.
Yeah, you got to bring the pleasantness, Todd. And the space that we're in, Todd, where we're out there at the front, the bleeding edge of change, with adopting ideas that are arguably over 100 years old in our industries. But I like that. I tell people I like there's a little bit of resistance. I mean, it kind of ups our game, Todd. Don't you have to say, when you're trying to bring something new?
Oh yeah.
If they just went with you right away, you can kind of mediocre your way through it.
Oh, they just run right off the cliff with me. That'd be terrible. I've got a lot of thoughts on that. I mean,
give me some.
Just with clients, right? With our clients for design. I think this is true, not just at my firm. I think this is just true universally. The clients that are more picky get better work. They drive us to do better. The ones that are easily satisfied are easily satisfied. I mean, so there is a lot of value in being a bit demanding, being particular, being discerning, right? And so that's in one space. But, yeah, the ideas I bring back to the nest, half of them are terrible, right? or they need heavy adaptation or whatever. And a couple of years ago at the Lean Design Forum, I led it was like a lean coffee discussion about, I called it lean backlash. Developed an ASP about lean backlash.
That's a good hook, man.
The subtitle was, why don't people like my solutions to their problems as much as I do?
Todd, do you have a gift? I'm going to come to you to start naming my shows.
I'm in. Yeah. But my research, my study on that was really just that as change makers, a lot of us, or at least me, have been our instincts are entirely wrong. We sort of try to bludgeon people with this is better. I really do have a better solution to your problems. If you would only see it. Why can't you see that I've got, I don't care that you've been doing this for 20 years. I've got the answer that you didn't know you needed. Well, you know what? Not too many people receive that message with thanks. Usually be like, wrong, I'm doing okay.
Keep walking.
And that's not a gripe. That's not something broken. That is a signal that you need to do the work to partner with people on changing something if change is needed, on elevating something, and not see resistance as them not getting the message. Their resistance is them sending you a message that you need to try harder, you need to work with them, you need to listen to their valid concerns and not think, as I have been all too guilty of doing, too many times, that you really do have the solution to their problems, because you probably don't.
It's hard too for leaders to step back, really admit that you don't know. Something can look just like what you've been through, and you're like, I know exactly what to do, because this has happened so many times. But the part that we don't see, the invisible part, is the person's experiences that got to where they are right now. And the solution that could work for Todd with Todd's experiences might not work for Felipe, because I don't have your skill set. I definitely can't PID program anymore. So that, there's something to that. And I think your approach to bring people with you and partner, you're going to find a better thing together, bridging, than you would just trailblazing.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm good at that.
How do you all at Boulder, what's the go-to typical way that you do planning?
You mean work planning or space planning?
Let's go with space planning first.
Okay. We don't have a typical way. It's, that's something that's so, and, by space planning, I mean, I've got a piece of property or a building and I need to put a healthcare use in it, right? I'm what I've come to call arranging rectangles, rooms, right? We don't really have a typical way that, there's no kind of one way to do this.
Okay, so let me ask this way. Yeah. Do you go, when you're sitting down with the client and they're describing their needs or their problem that you're going to help them overcome with building something, do you think inside out or outside in, typically? I'm talking just you, Todd, and then we'll see how other people compare.
Yeah, no, it's yes. It has to be both.
You just do both?
It has to be. It has to be. I think. Okay. Especially for what we do. I think if you're doing a museum, I think you can come up with a wackadoodle shape and then carve holes in it and go, yep, those are galleries. I may be being a little dismissive of museum design, but there's a lot more tolerance.
Shots fired against museum designers. Shots fired.
It's a very different design problem. What we do is we need to pack rectangular spaces into a compact arrangement with certain adjacencies. But, the front door really is somewhere, and the back door is somewhere. And, the electrical room isn't. It really is this dance of multiple iterations back and forth to find that kind of equipoise in between. And if you design a building entirely inside out, you get a really bizarro looking building. Well, one of our customers as architects, and one of the things I love about this profession is it's got so many kind of layers to it, right?
Right.
Obviously, our client is our primary customer. They're literally paying our bill, right?
Right.
But you know what? The people are a customer. My license is all about protecting the life safety of building occupants. I take that seriously. They are a customer, even though they're not paying for the space.
Right.
But the city that a building is in is a customer. The quality of the urban environment, how the building looks to people walking by, the shadows it casts, the glare it might cast, the damage it does to the environment in its construction and operations. Those are these successive kind of layers to the onion, and they're all, you could sort of think of them as a customer in a sense. And so design entirely from inside out, you're probably overlooking the needs of some of those customers on the outside. A simple way to think about it.
Oh, that was not simple. That was elegant. Yeah, I like that. I've been by some buildings where you can tell there's no regard for people having to be by them.
Just no regard for people.
Yeah. I was recently in Vegas, and one of the high-rise buildings was oriented in such a way that you couldn't pass by it without almost being blown off the street. It was just perfectly catching the wind at like all times a day. And as soon as you got, 20 feet away from the building, it was over. It was only because of how it was shaped and just bringing down gusts that never would hit the street otherwise. Yeah, Ruby the Chewini would just be blown off the curb.
Yeah.
It was intense. So no, I really appreciate that approach and heading after it in a couple different ways. I just saw an article in the news today in the morning paper that the economy is hotter than a ghost pepper. So things are going to start to pick back up again. So as you all start to expand, what's something you look for in design partners that you want at Boulder with that approach?
Yeah. Well, I love that question because
and we're way off any kind of script that we had as promised.
So I'm involved in the hiring in my office. I've hired quite a few people, and that's hard. That is hard work. It's labor intensive, and it's just hard to make decisions that way. But I look at it. This is a little hyperbolic, but it's a little like nominating a Supreme Court justice. It shapes how things are going to be for a while. We try very, very hard to I say hire for life, even though I acknowledge that sounds a little creepy.
You could say,
but hire for the long term, right? And we don't binge and purge. We don't hire up people and then let them go. So I try to make very careful decisions. And you know what I've finally learned, I think, is I almost don't care. Not quite, but I almost don't care the specific skills a person has. Let's say I'm hiring someone younger, and it's so cute. Their resumes always have, nowadays, I don't know, someone told them, hey, list all the software that you know and give yourself a little self-rating on like a 5-star scale for each thing. It's cute. It's neat. It's graphic. Yeah. And I've learned to utterly disregard that because you can learn software, especially people right out of school. They learn software, boom, just like it's not a problem. They've grown up learning how to learn software. So I don't hire someone because they think they know Revit. Also, they're lying. Or they're not lying. They just don't know. They learned Revit in school, so they think they know something about Revit. They have the faintest idea
love that.
Of like what we actually do. Right. I'm looking for someone with the right personality. And just, even that's tricky.
Because you're probably, knowing, now that you told me about your approach, you're probably thinking, everybody in the firm right now, plus this person, plus their uniqueness. So you're so global with the thinking. And that's why I could see it in your faces, like you're struggling to just get it out, because I can see your mind just flashing to all of these Rolodex of people and people you've looked at recently, people you said no to and for reasons you probably couldn't put your finger on, but you just knew it wasn't going to fit.
Yeah, but the part of my hesitation here is that there's a real danger in that, in the notion of I hire people I like, because that's probably going to trend toward I hire people like me. Mm-hmm. And that is a wonderful system if you want a lot of people that look like this particular meat suit, right? And what I want is actually the opposite of that, right? So I'm actually still in flux about how to think about making hiring decisions in a bit more rigorous fashion, so that we don't. So that we de-energize the circuits of bias, of all of the 100 kinds of bias that we can have. And I don't have a systematic way to sort of express that. I'm very proud that my office looks like San Francisco, and in just a ton of diversity and just some. I look at my crew and I'm just radiantly proud of them. Cool people. But we have to be real careful with that thing of hiring based on subjective impressions, because that can very easily support outcomes we really don't want to have in the workplace.
Right, it does. You're hammering back in on that. Serving the client. That you need diverse thinking to solve these really gnarly problems, and you're not going to get it if everyone. I mean, as awesome as you are, Todd, if you just had more Todds, then you're limiting what your firm can react to. It's like your salmon analogy. It's like perfect. You're just going to have like off-the-shelf salmon that all of a sudden there's a landslide and boom, your whole entire species dies because you couldn't adapt. So having the aces and jacks in your mix is just going to make sure that Boulder lives on forever.
Yeah. One of the things that has caught my attention, so the struggle I have is I am deeply and voraciously omnivorous about everything. I'm just omni-curious, and that is honestly a struggle because that makes me involved in too many things and split in too many directions. And so that's the kryptonite to what I'm about to say, which is, I get interested in different things. But one of those things is this field called knowledge management, KM. And that has struck me as a way of implementing. Another thing about me is I tend to tie things together. So to me, knowledge management is lean applied to knowledge work. It's how do we know who knows what? How do we increase that and manage that? How do we do better at transmitting knowledge between each other? All I've got, if you're a builder, if you're a mason, you've at least got some bricks or something, right?
Right.
That have value. We just got brains. We got brains, and we got some computers and mice and crap and some pencils. So you should be really good at managing brains, right? And I swear I'm going to land this plane in a minute. So knowledge management is this whole other discipline in community that I'm really getting a lot of great ideas out of and enjoy. And I tie it to lean because it just feels like a way of enacting kind of lean ideas in this invisible space of kind of knowledge. And then you have just a little over a year ago, and George Floyd gets murdered. And something about that woke a lot of us up, a lot of us middle-aged white guys up and went, we've been ignoring something that honestly is really bloody obvious, and it's right there, and can no longer live with myself ignoring the inequities in our society. I feel very late to that, but to me, the struggle toward justice and equity, EDI, if you want to have it as a shorthand, is also about lean. Lean is founded on respect for people, and I take that really seriously. And we're not respecting some people, and we are profoundly disrespecting some people, and I can't live with that. And so there's that. And it's also knowledge management, right? I mean, it's just waking up and saying, my goodness, where are the black architects? There are, I think, 500 female black architects.
In the whole U.S.?
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's tiny.
That's effed up. That's effed up. And that's just to pick one particular, right? One particular example of inequity and problem, right? And not easily untangled. But what part of that am I part of? And can I do something about, not only as an expression of respect for people, which is just, to me, this bedrock concept that undergirds everything, but also, it's going to make us better. The more different people, not just that we employ, but that we truly respect and who feel comfortable and not just comfortable, I'm reaching for a word, I'm not grabbing it, but who really feel fully bought in to where they work and can participate and bring their whole self, just as they are, in all their wonderfulness. That's, I mean, what does anyone want from an architecture firm but a collection of a whole bunch of different ideas and different experiences and backgrounds? So all this stuff, to me, just kind of melds together and is hugely motivating.
I know what you mean, Todd. It's all connected. It's not separate. It's fractal, to get nerdy on people. What happens outside in the world is happening inside of our organizations as well. And people are waking up. I mean, it's like things that we even talk about as an organization, as a company, and in projects now. I mean, even the water cooler talk is different than it was 5 years ago.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I remember my first job, my very first job out of college, 1994, was in Baltimore. And here you go with the ACE thing, right? And I thought, well, I'm from Oregon, went to the University of Oregon. I had standing job offers in Portland for firms I'd worked for in the summer, and I thought, if I don't get out of Portland, Oregon now, I will never see any other place. Sorry, Mom and Dad, I'm gonna go try the East Coast for a while, and so that's how I wound up in Baltimore. And I remember one of the first job sites I came onto, and there was those brown job boxes that the tools get stored in. Yeah. And the lid was up, and the inside of the lid was plastered with porn, just right there. I'm like, huh, okay, that's how job sites are. And I mean, and there's a you go, okay, there's a part of me that can go, I could see how that could be a thing. But it's nice that the field, but you can imagine that there were no women on that job site. Yeah,
no women.
Right? And if there were, they'd feel intensely uncomfortable. Probably a lot of people would be uncomfortable. So it's nice to see the world really is advancing. You don't see that on job sites anymore.
No, it's true. That's one change. Yeah. I have other stories that I can't even share on recorded media about things that you don't see on job sites anymore that used to happen in my lifetime. So, yeah, nuts. Powerful Baltimore.
Yeah,
even Baltimore's.
Maybe that's a story about Baltimore as much as anything. I don't know.
No, I think it was across, everywhere, and things are changing. We're having more even diversity coming into the trades out of necessity because we just need more people from anywhere to come in. We've got to attract people in. And I think conversations like this, Todd, that you and I are having are going to encourage people to fall into architecture like Todd did. Like, put down that application for electrical engineering and just go ahead and go architecture, try it out. You can always come back. And you can always, use neither and go work for a general contractor like I did. It's totally possible. I think, it's very fascinating how you and Romano have been so intentional with bringing lean practices into your firm and then using it with your clients, and it's also attracted a certain type of clientele to your firm. Like you're not going to get like the one-off developer knocking on your door and wanting just to do this one single job and never call you again. You probably have a lot of repeat long-term work, and especially like when you said you went to St. Luke's, and I think the client brought you in there to kind of round out the team because of the experiences they'd had with you before. So I think that says a lot about this type of approach and finding your tribe and the people that you like working with.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, they brought us in. So, you know, Romano had really taken lean ideas to heart and worked very hard, kind of pioneered applying them to design. And our client for that project, Sutter Health, I think we can mention them.
You can mention Sutter Health. They're proud of their history and what they've done.
Yeah, they should be. They freaking changed the world, honestly, by just saying, you know what, doing it the old-fashioned way is too slow, too expensive, and too stupid. We got to figure something better out, and they set some things in motion. It's pretty wonderful. We're not a huge firm. We can't do an enormous bed tower on our own, right? We're just not that big. But we are agile and flexible, and you know, by that point, a bunch of us had really gone deep into trying to think about lean, and I think that's what got us a place on that team. And that was just a seminal experience in my career. Just so much fun, so interesting. Just such a different order of engagement. I think about it all the time.
How many years was that design phase?
God.
Because I feel like we've been talking about that job for like 10 years.
Oh yeah, it was like 13 years or something like that. But you have to. And I think we were like the third architectural team on that thing. I think they designed it twice before or something like that. And that's a lot about San Francisco politics and the way that project was bundled with a bunch of other projects that Sutter wanted to do around the city, and a CEQA, which is the big environmental impact review that was years in the making. The thing is literally like a foot and a half thick, the document. So we can say 13 years, but it wasn't just took us that long to design a building.
There's a lot of things happening, yeah.
A whole lot of things happening, yeah.
Politics in a city, I mean, even smaller cities, the political environment heavily affects what can be designed and built. I don't think people, you know, outside of construction that don't work in it can appreciate how powerfully influential local politics are on what we try to do.
That was an eye-opener for me because I'd never been involved in something that had that level of kind of public scrutiny. Usually my stuff, there's a city council meeting and they go, yeah, looks good, check, you know, and off we go, right? But this was, you know, a whole different thing. But you know, you mentioned Romano, and so several years ago we did. Have you ever done strength finders?
Of course I have.
Yeah.
Got my strengths memorized. You tell me yours and I'll tell you mine.
Okay. My top, so input, learning, responsibility, and analytical. And then there's one more I'm forgetting.
Wow. My number one is also input, Todd. As you were talking, I was just completely lit up like, this is my guy. Todd is going to be my bro. Like, we're going to be partnered forever. And in my top 10, also have learning in my top 10. So we have two in the flow. Then I've got individualization, context communication, and the ever fun woo.
You have woo?
I have woo.
Oh, well, I'm not surprised. I mentioned my partner Jenny, and she's the only person in our firm who has woo, and it's like her number one thing. And when we were sitting around, having done this, and we're talking about them, it was like, oh, we understand Jenny now. and now she's our director of business development, because that is the right place for her.
Oh my God, this makes total sense. So for people that don't know, WOO is an acronym, stands for winning over others.
You can't not do it.
Can't not do it. It's impossible. Yep.
That's, yeah. And so, of my top 5, 4 of them are about inhaling information for the pure joy of it. And the descriptions of some of these things are kind of funny because I'm like, oh yeah, you got me pegged, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I got you. I mean, you're on a construction podcast and we talked about
Right.
salmon for I think 25 minutes. So, I mean,
Right?
And I let you go with it because I have input. I needed to hear the story. Like every time you pause, because I'm not like your normal people that don't have input and learner in the top. So when you're like, I'm going to land this plane, I'm like, don't land the plane. Let's refuel in the air and let's just keep going, Todd.
I never really do land the plane, I don't think. Yeah, yeah, like you said, doing that. I'm a big skeptic of personality tests. I mean,
The Myers-Briggs, the DISC. I'm with you on that
crap.
too. Yeah.
I mean, it's
The research is out. Like there was no research.
pointless. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
We did the
Sorry,
Enneagram.
psychologists and all the little cottage industry that makes a killing. It's probably like a multi-billion-dollar industry worldwide.
I'm sure. And it's garbage. The Myers-Briggs is garbage. The Enneagram makes the Myers-Briggs look great. I mean, Enneagram is, I don't care, but people get mad. It's a freaking horoscope. That's the best I can say about it. And yet, I have found, in spite of my skepticism, I have found strength finders to have resonated with me in a way that the others haven't. It might be garbage too, but boy, I haven't found evidence that it is. It doesn't feel like it is, so I'm open to that. But it showed me something about who I am and helped me go, oh, that's why I do that, and that's why I struggle with, being distracted. I'm too like, oh, squirrel. But Romano, one of his top ones, if not his top one, is ideation. And I
Makes total sense. As soon as you said it, it was like instantly, yep.
And I remember him in this discussion saying, oh, that makes sense. That's why, like, when I'm driving down the highway, I often miss my exit. So I am so deep in thought. And I was like, yep, that is full on Romano.
That totally describes. I was in a meeting that he was leading for a pool planning session, and his ideation 100% lit on. And I was just like watching. The person next to me definitely was all like about the business. Like they were full on activator, let's go mode. Like, this is killing me. We're wasting time. And I said, just hold on a second. Wait for it. It's coming. And he did something with like looking at milestones that I appreciate, and it's probably like 3 times more, or it's 100 times more than I'd ever seen before. But I appreciate it, and I have borrowed some of that in how I engage with, especially designers, where the milestones are not so well defined at times in the design phase.
A little squishy. Yeah.
But he took people through, like, and I would there's no other word to describe it other than an ideation session on like what it is, and people had to do homework, Todd, before they could even come here. Like he had them do homework, and he had like one of the people in your office was like in charge of making sure the homework had been done, and then and then people had to show their work, and it was ideation. I think is definitely, they got him in. Don Clifton, wherever you are, you got Romano's number.
Well, and it maybe the broader point is just that thing of diversity and of collecting a lot of different people and then set them loose on the thing they're good at, right?
Right.
And good stuff happens when you do that.
And now that you said, is Jenny in the Sacramento office?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I think when I went and saw Romano, I think Jenny greeted me at the front door.
Probably did.
And I was just like, wow, Jenny is just so nice. I was like, I feel so welcome. Like I could just come here every day of the week. I mean, now it makes sense. So she's got Woo number 1. Jenny, if you're listening to the show, you won me over. Congratulations.
She can't help it either. It's fun to watch her in action.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
there's something powerful about understanding what you're good at, having a sense of what your colleagues are good at, and then use each other to the best purpose. Business development. Well, she's in charge of that now, and hallelujah, because she enjoys it. Me, not so much, right? The fear of rejection, the thing of like, hi, I'm Todd, I'm an architect, and talking about that stuff. I do it because it's my job. I mean, I literally have to.
Yeah.
But it's, and once I get going, I'm fine. But just, so we team up on stuff, and she'll set the thing up, and then we'll go, and then, and you get a sense. You wind me up, and I'll start chattering, right, pretty easily.
Right.
Use each other for what we're good at. And I think there's a powerful message in that, I think.
Yeah, and I'm not buying that you're an introvert by no stretch of the imagination. I've seen you work a room like a boss, and you worked a conference where you couldn't see people like a boss. So get some your predisposition thinking what you are. I'm going to reclassify you.
But you didn't see me utterly collapse and like fold in on myself for several hours after that and just like hide from the world.
You should have just called me. I would have told you how it went. Like, you got my cell phone number, Todd.
It wasn't from worry about how it went. Actually, I'm really psyched how it went. It's like just the like, okay, I need to recharge.
Okay.
I've been burning bright.
That sounds legit. But Todd, I'm not going to let you get off of this call until you talk to me about Scrum in your firm.
I was hoping we would talk about Scrum.
Dying to hear about it.
I think about Scrum all the time. I kind of refer to everything I do as an experiment. Just the word I use, but we've been experimenting with this for a while now. I mean, the thing that got me interested was actually a friend back east who showed me planning poker. Do you know planning poker?
Oh, of course I do.
Okay. For folks who are listening, it's a way of estimating work, how big the different tasks are that you're doing. We could go down that rabbit hole, but maybe I'll stop there for now. It opened my eyes to a different way of thinking. Well, maybe let's go down this rabbit hole for a second. So that's where I started, was just with that one tool.
Yeah, and for people listening, like, check Todd's LinkedIn profile. He loves planning poker so much, it's in the additional about me. And I was like, you're probably the first architect ever in the history of planet Earth. Like, you're definitely, when I see you on the street, you're getting high-fived by me, Todd, just so you know.
Right on. I love it. I'm at best the second. Guy I learned it from an architect in like North Carolina that was using Scrum.
Well, we'll check his profile or her profile and see if it's there.
Yeah.
I bet you it's not there.
But it's this brilliant thing. The struggle in architecture, I think in construction, right? You can measure how much you got done because you can see it, and the person can literally put a tape measure on it. Right. Or you can measure the flow of materials through the job site. Architecture, kind of not so much, right?
Right.
How many pounds does one idea weigh? And so we have struggled forever, I think probably since building the pyramids, honestly, with estimating how much work do we have, how long is it going to take, just simply that. And this was this way of using research that goes back to like World War II and a tremendous, in the Rand Corporation, tremendous body of research that says...
Hold on a second. Got to get the bell. Todd, you go to the head of the class. First person I teach Scrum, for Scrum Inc., and we reference that, and you're the first person, just a natural conversation, to mention the Rand Corporation, where they got it from. So I've got to give you 2 bells. If we were on a game show right now, Todd, you'd be winning like the multi-million-dollar prize. So
yes,
you got it. Keep going.
Right on. Well, it's amazing, right? Humans suck at estimating absolute values. We just do. We're not evolved to do it. We're great at estimating relative things. You can imagine someone saying that water buffalo is twice as big as that water buffalo. Let's go kill the smaller one because it's less likely to kill us, or whatever. 1,000 ways to imagine how that evolved as a useful thing. Whatever room you're sitting in, if I said, okay, tell me how many cubic feet of air it contains, you'd have to do measurements and you'd have to do math. But if I said, how much bigger is it than the room where you take your shower?
Oh, yeah.
You'd probably say, oh, yeah, it's about 5 times bigger. and you would do no effort at all because our brains are adapted to do that. And that's the magic of relative estimating. And in design, that is a fantastic way for us to get our hands around how much do we actually have here? Because if we're trying to say it's going to take me 3 hours to do this task, that's an absolute estimate. And I can tell you through years of trying to do this, right, with experimenting with lean across the firm and intense efforts at work planning, we suck at that because you get into the task and you discover, oh, it's way more complex than I thought it was. Or and architects, bless our silly hearts, we are such optimists. We are just cursed with optimism. I think you can't be. I'm sure someone can prove me wrong on this. I don't think you can be a pessimistic architect because we exist to try to make things better, right?
Right. Well, in StrengthsFinder, Todd, when you find an architect that has deliberative in their top 5 strengths, you will have found your pessimist.
Okay.
So you look at your architect friends.
I'm going to go look at our.
Yeah. And then talk to that person. You'll be like, wow, they're just so pessimistic, and they're going to tell you like, no, they're realistic.
So, and every client that's listening to this knows exactly what I'm talking about. We overpromise like no tomorrow because we, broadly speaking, don't know what our limits are, and we're just so optimistic that things are going to go smooth. So yeah, that task, that's about 3 hours, and I add up all my tasks, and I got a 40-hour work week, and it's going to be great. And you are going to get a third of that done. And so doing relative estimating is actually this way of circling around where you're not trying to put hours to it. You're just trying to say this is big and this is medium and these are small. You give these kind of points and then go, you know what? My team, I know that my team, right now I've got a team headquartered in our Charlotte office, and they can do about 100 points a week. Reliably, they can burn 100 points a week through our work plan. And if we plan 200 points a week, we know that we're lying to somebody. We ain't going to get it done, right?
Right.
And so that was my entree into Scrum, and it took me. I played with that with just relative estimating for 3-4 years, and then went and saw Jeff Sutherland speak at a Lean Design Forum. Actually, bought his book while he was still talking. And then, like an idiot, I waited a year to read it, and then I read it, and I went, "Holy buckets, this is amazing!" And
hold on, Todd. You don't feel bad because J.J. Sutherland is Jeff's son.
Oh,
grew up in his house, and totally dismissed Scrum his entire life until 2009. Even the person that Jeff raised, it took him until 2009 to be like, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot.
Read it, and then me, I'm sort of diehard do-it-yourselfer. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot. And it was after that, about a year after that, and I was like, maybe I should get some learning about this rather than just read the book and give it, hey, hold my beer, watch this kind of approach. All too, and that's went and got Scrum Master training, and that blew my mind because it showed me. Oh, this sounds so cheesy and cliche, but it showed me sort of the deeper meaning underneath the steps. I had gotten the steps and the mechanics from the book, but not so much the why. And and Peter Green was the trainer, and he's just I've seen him in a number of things. He's just freaking brilliant agilist, and just the way he approached facilitating a team, where it wasn't about him, and just so much of the kind of
some of the agilist
learning and all that.
They're like Zen masters, Todd.
Yeah.
Like people that are into Zen, like some of these agile coaches, I mean, they can just go with the flow, like just connect in on you with wherever you're at. An entire class too, where you've got a lot of mixed experiences. Like, and I'll do classes where some people have read Jeff's Red book, they've read JJ's book, they've read the Scrum Guide like 30 times, and then the person next to them doesn't even know the definition of Scrum. And yet they're in this class to become a Scrum Master. I mean, that's like a massive amount of variation right there. Two people.
Can we talk about that term? I just find Scrum Master to be the most embarrassing term ever.
It's the same. So inside of the Scrum world, only 2 people can change that term: Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland.
Yeah.
And so inside,
deliberately made it kind of embarrassing, so you don't throw it around too much. Inside
of all those circles, people are mounting pressure to have that term changed. And so when Jeff had Willie Wygans spun this out in Europe to teach Scrum in schools, when one of the first times he exposed it to the kids said, "Yeah, we don't like that term." I mean, this is like early 2000s, and they said, "What if can we just say team captain?" And so in Scrum and Agile, they don't say Scrum Master. They say team captain. And I even told the people at Scrum Inc., I said, team captain makes more sense because the team captain plays in the game. And 99.9% of Scrum Masters pool work and backlog, and they play in the game. So I started telling people recently, team captain. I was like, and you read the Scrum Guide, the team captain is the Scrum Master, servant leader. Mm-hmm. They even say the genuine leader. I think it's going to eventually change, Todd.
Interesting. Yeah, good. Probably for the better.
There's rumblings every year, and it looks like the guide is getting updated now about every other year, roughly.
That's good.
So they'll keep evolving and adapting. It does change quite a bit. Like he said, like the early guide was like, a stack of papers like this thick when it first came out in 1995, and then they had way too much in it. Now it's 12 pages plus a cover page. Yeah. I'm not like that.
But we've been, I've been basically trying this on my teams, and to largely great effect. I mean, definitely learned some stuff right along the way, and both personally about how to make change happen, especially like how to not try to make change, but how to support change.
Create the conditions so change can emerge.
Yeah, exactly. But by and large, the teams who've tried it generally enjoy it and generally find value in it, and it tends to stick. I think we struggle, I'll just be candid, with not rounding it off.
Yeah.
Not cutting corners and being like, well, we don't need these, whatever. Our retrospectives are weird. Let's just maybe stop them. No, that's like if you keep one thing, if you keep that, you're going to be okay. So there's always work to do, and there's always more. But it's been fun, and one of the biggest things to me when I've had those like fist pumping moments is with regard to our younger staff, and that when you have a workflow, when you have a framework for running your project that is founded on transparency and honesty and courage, and I forget the two other values at the moment.
Focus, commitment.
Focus. Oh my God, focus. If you mean it and you live it, and you actually aren't just saying the words, but you're actually really trying, that's a wonderful learning environment. Kind of for everyone, but especially for people who are newer to architecture. What you learn in college is like 0.1% of what you actually need to be an architect. We're still a heavily apprenticeship-based thing.
Nothing wrong with that, Todd.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think there's a lot that's right about that, except that architects aren't trained to be trainers, right?
Right.
So you pick up the habits of whoever trained you. Let's hope you had someone good, right? Maybe you didn't. And so it's been huge to watch newer staff where at a lot of firms, they get handed a stack of red lines, or these days it's a blue beam full of red lines.
Yes.
And they don't know why.
Spreadsheet of comments.
Get it done. And now the team is self-criticizing and self-improving and having real conversations about how do we be a better team? How do we do better work? And it's all done in the open with big hearts, right? And that's not for nothing. It's been cool.
It's beautiful.
Well, I think it also supports not micromanaging. It supports the team leadership helping set the direction, but not how things get done. And that gives people the room to figure out the best how. And there's respect for people built into that.
One of the first teams that I used Scrum with was actually a San Francisco architecture team. And they were like, we tried using pool planning. It didn't work because they were in programming. So you're talking about just so many decisions need to happen with over 100 stakeholders. And it's like 100 different votes to go in 100 different ways for almost every decision. So we scrummed it. And they took something that should have taken 60 days and they did it in less than 60 days. I can't remember now how much faster it was. And it happened just in the dialogue. And I used my story training to talk through what their tasks were. We took a spreadsheet of things that had to happen, and we talked through it as stories, and they Kanbanized it, and they made like cards using some digital technology, like a smart sheets or something like that. And they created their Kanban board, and then they iterated through it, and people stepped up, Todd, on their own and took ownership.
Isn't that gorgeous when it happens?
It was
Doesn't your heart
beautiful.
just kind of burst out of your chest? You're like, oh, this is so great.
It was
Unlocking human potential is so it's beautiful when you see it. Man, you open that whole avenue. We gotta talk more. We haven't talked about mobbing and pair programming.
Yep. Swarming. I mean, I got to get you turned on to there's a whole Scrum Patterns book that's free.
Yeah.
That's online. Have you been to scrumplop.org?
Honestly, I stumbled over this like a week ago, and I have it in my a tab in my browser. And
There are nearly, we'll call them like 300 recipes for these different things. It was almost 300.
Patterns.
Yeah.
Do you know what I love about that? Is it's built, it's modeled after a pattern language by Christopher Alexander, who is this architect, heavily influenced University of Oregon, where I went to school, and he did the campus plan for University of Oregon.
Oh my God, what a small world.
I love connections between things. It just thrills my goofy architect heart.
Oh, that's amazing. I think this whole conversation for me has been just pure magic, Todd. Pure magic. I love it. You brought in Christopher Alexander. I've been wanting to talk about Christopher Alexander on this podcast for so long. We talk about his book. Every Scrum course, we talk about this, the thing that cannot be named, and how Christopher brings language into that and talking about things like beauty. I just want to thank Todd for coming on the show. I'm going to give you the last word in just a second, but I want to give a shout out to all the listeners, all the watchers around the world tuning in every single other week, because that's when we release on Wednesdays, and absolutely love. There's been an outpouring of feedback on the website, giving reviews for all the shows. Thank you, listeners, for supporting us and encouraging us. Todd needs to hear what you loved about this show, as do I.
Felipe, just an honor to be on your podcast, and a blast talking with someone where, kicking around ideas like this, that just lights my brain up, and just thrilled to be here. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
You are welcome, Todd.
Very special thanks to my guest. I'm Felipe Engineer Manriquez. The EBFC show is created by Felipe and produced by a passion to build easier and better. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Let's go build.